Greetings, friends. Today is Tuesday, March 31st, 2026, and this is the April ASTRO-TA-MACRO forecast. And I'm joined with three of my favorite traders and analysts. Jarrid from the Trade Travel Chill community. His specialty is macroeconomics. Blair, creator of the Time Trades, AI, and time-based software, and also wizard analyst. And Dale, lovingly known as Coach, who makes great contributions to helping people learn to trade, as well as being an outstanding seasoned trader himself. Welcome, everybody.
Hey, Margot.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, guys.
So we have no shortage of exciting things to talk about for the month of April. Everything between the conflict with Iran, the oil supply shortages, and what is in store for the month of April as the markets have been coming down into, this end of the quarter rebalancing moment. So I thought that we would kick it off. We can take a look at a couple of the key of astrology events, but really I want to focus on actionable market forecasts. So I'll just start with a screen share, and I'm going to share a couple key astro events, and then I think we'll just kind of jump into the charts from there.
Sounds good.
All right, here we go. Okay. So first and most relevant, and Dale actually asked about this right when we hopped on the call before we clicked record, is the full moon that's taking place tomorrow. And oftentimes lunar cycles can be turning points, the full moons and new moons, also quarter moons as well. In the financial markets, they vary depending on asset, and they can invert. So you can get classic lows associated with full moons, and then that can turn around and go the other way at in different assets at different times of the year for various different reasons. But clearly, the new moon is tomorrow, and it's tomorrow evening over New York City at 10:11 p.m. And the new moon is going to be at 12 degrees of Libra. And
full, right, Margot?
Oh, sorry. Yes, thank you. Full moon is going to be at 12 degrees of Libra. And
I don't serenade women under a new moon. Only under a full moon. Okay.
Only
my guitar, I've tuned up my guitar. I'm getting ready. Go ahead.
Well, the Libra full moon is all about Libra is about balance, relationship, legal matters. So you're picking a nice full moon to serenade the ladies.
Oh, well, maybe I should also hire an attorney to sue X.
I actually think you should. I think I miss you. Something severe. For the viewers who don't know, Dale's account was erroneously suspended by the X people.
AI, get used to it. AI.
Yeah, the worst part is there's no human to talk to about it. Yeah. That is absolutely the downside of the AI stuff. So if we just get back to the full moon, what really stands out to me is that it's making what's called a yod. And a yod is an aspect that's known as the finger of God, if you will. And so the apex is the full moon in Libra. And then the legs we've got Mercury still in Pisces. It's now direct. So we're out of that really watery, sloggy Mercury retrograde period that just passed. But Mercury's still hanging out in the sign of Pisces, and Mercury's in its fall in Pisces. That means that it's weakened. And it's very tightly orbed here to an asteroid called Vesta. And Vesta is the trader's asteroid. And so that's interesting to me that we've got Mercury, which rules the markets, and very tightly orbed to Vesta, and in a 150-degree angle here to the full moon in Libra. And the 150-degree angle is known for not seeing the full moon very well. So it's almost like what I'm seeing here is that the markets aren't seeing the full moon very well. And the full moon is falling in the 11th house, which is the house of gains. So that's also interesting.
Yeah.
And then we're
also of those going on.
Plenty of gains.
Yes.
Yeah, well, we hope so. We hope that
especially, that announcement
yeah.
when there was, where there was that huge spike of volume of oil sells and S&P buys a week ago last Monday, 15 minutes prior to the post on Truth Social.
Yeah, I know that. And
who needs charts if you're wired in?
Absolutely. I mean, that's
pisses me off.
Yeah, it's not new, I mean,
No.
I know that, a story from John Carter from years ago, when he was in his trading room was talking about trading during 9/11. And maybe you have some stories about this too, Dale, but he said that he saw the flows coming in days before for the shift before the event actually took place,
Wow.
But basically the full moon is, generally speaking, to me, this doesn't have like a outrageously positive bias to the markets, nor does it have an outrageously negative bias to the markets. What it's telling me is that there is a little bit of a difficulty seeing the gains. And with that Libra moon, it's just a lot of times in the markets, when you have a Libra moon, you get one way and then the other. And what I've been seeing, as far as if we actually really just look to the markets for the cycles that I'm looking at, I've got a lot of very strong pivots coming in on the US equity markets for the weekly charts for this week. And if we look at, I run these analogs, which are these forecasts based on planetary cycles. And the one that I have been tracking most closely is this orange one. And this is what I am envisioning that we are going to see in the US equity markets over the next few weeks. I don't think that April as a whole is a V-shaped recovery month. I think April has a lot of volatility in it, because not only do we have this analog that forecasts that, and there's a couple other analogs here that we could hide. These are, I run various different cycles and I track them. This is the orange is the primary I'm keeping an eye on.
Okay. Well, that's a pretty strong rally from here.
It is, but if you take a look at it, it's got a double or even a triple bottom here as we get through April. And if we this is a weekly chart. If we drop it down to the daily, you get a little bit more granularity. So you get another low next week and then another low the week of the 20th. And from an astrology standpoint, I have got like this period of time that every month when I look at the charts from an astrology standpoint or a financial astrology standpoint, I see these hot zones. And the hot zones show up in both the astrology chart, and they also show up on the price charts and on all of my cycle measurements that are actually measured in a totally different way than when I look at this astrology chart. And the hot zone that I'm seeing in April is actually right around, it's between the 17th and the 20th. And it starts with the new moon on the 17th, which is a doozy of a new moon. And so while that full moon looks a little bit more benign to me, the new moon that takes place on the 17th has actually an almost unprecedented in this century number of planets sitting in Aries. And Aries is the sign of ignition, forward motion. It's new beginnings, right? So we've got Neptune, Mercury, Mars, Saturn, and then we've got the Chiron, and Chiron is an asteroid. Eris is an asteroid. And then we've got the sun and the moon as well during this transit. And so that new moon there comes in tightly orbed to Chiron and Eris. And Chiron is an asteroid associated to core wounds. And so you've got a lot of motivation and energy towards, and so the new moon also sets the tone for the next lunar cycle, right? So it's not just what's going to happen on the day of the new moon. It's what are we going to see play out over the next 29 days. And the Eris Chiron conjunction is really about the wound of the self. And that's for personal astrology. And so if you could look at that like on a more collective scale, you could talk about the wound of a country, right? Or the wound of any collective entity. And so you have that really getting activated by the sun and the moon. So that's all the light that we have is being illuminated on this woundings place. And it's all opposite to fixed star Spica. And fixed star Spica is the star most closely related to wealth and good fortune. So think it's a little bit rough. This is a tricky new moon.
What's your intuition tell you? Do we rally for a few days and go down into that period for a significant low? Or
Yeah.
is that we bottomed here,
Well,
rally
then,
for a few weeks, and it ends up being a high?
yeah, I think we're gonna see a lot of volatility the next 3 weeks because I have weekly pivots on the US equity markets for the next 3 weeks. If we kind of take a look at my weekly chart here, we have each one of these tags here, and this is the ES, continuous contract futures. So each one of these little tags, this is a time trades indicator called the ruler, and I use it to measure cycles. And you can correlate cycles to pivots and moves in financial markets. And you can see we've got one hit last week, one hit this week, and then we've got a cluster that hits next week. And then if I zoom over and look at the NASDAQ, I actually have one on the week after that as well. And when you get that, you typically get a lot of volatility. And so, here's my analog for the ES too. We've got two of them, right? The one that's actually tracking right now is this one. And what do you see? It's a rounded bottom. It's a volatile bottom. It's just like the Dow. And this is a different cycle run on the ES. So I think that's what I'm seeing. And the worst part is that then that vortex window we've got on the 19th and the 20th, we get another very rare event. Not only do we have all those planets in Aries, but we're going to have a Mercury, Mars, Saturn conjunction, all at the 7 degrees within less than 24 hours of each other. And that's the tightest orb that those three planets have been in since 1900. And that's as far back as I went, and it might be farther than that. And so we don't have a historical precedent for what to say is going to happen here. But the research that I did is really around Iran. And there is a very, very, very strong correlative case that when there is already a conflict brewing in the background with Iran, that these Saturn-Neptune conjunctions typically correlate to either escalation or some sort of event. There have been moments of de-escalation, so I won't completely rule that out. But there's definitely more of a bias towards escalation events. So I suspect we may see some like positive news about the war, some, the ongoing taco, right? And I think that might be a rough week, but we may end up coming out of it to the upside, So that's overall what I'm looking for in April. I have a secondary scenario too. And that secondary scenario is a bearish scenario because I feel like we always have to know when we're wrong, right? And the secondary scenario would be that we could form a lower high and continue down.
And Margot, perhaps going to the 19th theme with the new moon. I mean, wounds, could it be that boots on the ground by American forces? And it's an unfavorable outcome for the U.S. by doing that at that
They'll
time
be ready
period.
by then for sure.
Well, that's when if you believe in some of the tracking of the military units, it would put them in the region, especially the latest aircraft carrier that left the East Coast. It put them there about the 20th. And at this time, the number of troops they've been talking about is not nearly enough, based on, not myself, but based on actual geopolitical analysts that know what they're talking about. There's not going to be enough boots on the ground to have a favorable outcome. So with that overlay theme of the new moon, it could be boots on the ground, unfavorable outcome for the U.S. forces. Because when I look at scheduled macro events this month, really it's pretty quiet the back half of the week before and the week of that weekend. There's no major scheduled macro news items. So that's not really giving me any confluence. And again, I don't expect there to be anything related to the Fed. So it would likely mean something to your point. Iran, boots on the ground, or some sort of escalation, de-escalation event.
Yeah, I mean, we could only hope for it to potentially be a de-escalation event, right? If we, I hadn't done this yet, so I'm just dropping this on the United States chart. And this is the United States Liberty chart. The problem, one of the problems I have with the United States charts is there's so many different ones. This one is the United States Liberty chart. It's July 2nd, 1776. And I like this one. I also like a July 4th chart, but let's just take a peek here. This is very interesting. The United States has a natal Chiron at 20 degrees Aries. So that's notable. But Chiron's a very slow moving planet. So Chiron is actually Chiron's been transiting the natal Chiron of the United States for probably the last year. So that's very interesting. But yeah, that is an interesting, it is, this new moon is almost exactly square to the United States Pluto. And that is pretty significant because, Pluto is correlated to deep-seated transformation. And, when we're talking about war, and Pluto sits in the second house, well, that's the second house of this chart. Depends on what time you use as to what houses you end up with on the United States chart. But anyway, that's interesting to me. I hadn't really prepared
Pluto's
that.
also, death and rebirth cycle.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Very much so.
Well, I left you guys last month being pretty negative that semiconductors.
You did.
And Micron had a mini crash.
And that was the right call.
You could pull up the weekly
on Micron.
That's a big break that Micron had.
Yeah, that was
and I was
such a good
drawing
call.
a comparison to it looking like silver. And
Yeah,
it's beginning to look like silver. We have a reversal day and potential reversal week. But, my view is it's topped. It's got more downside. I'd sell rips. That's the weekly on it.
That's the weekly. Yeah, we got to return to the mean on the weekly.
Yeah, so, I still see downside in the semis. What's front and center for me right now is we're going to find out if gold and silver have bottomed or this is going to be a shorting opportunity, probably a day or so away tomorrow on the full moon. It was one of my reversal candidates. So I could show my chart so people
let's
see the line.
That'd be great.
Yeah, and while you do that, Dale, what's interesting is that we're recording this on the last day of the first quarter. So at the end of the quarter and the start of a new quarter, you'll get changes in institutional flows as they adjust their portfolios before they have to send out their investor letters. So, and then this week's even more interesting being a holiday short week. Friday, Europe and US are on, markets are closed. Tomorrow is the start of Passover. So we might not see.
I was thinking about that when Margaret was talking about the finger of God. So it was definitely the finger of God, the Exodus story, which we all go through.
Yeah, so if we are making a bottom today, it'll be interesting if it continues into next week.
Yeah, so what I'm looking for gold-wise is you can see pretty good here on the daily. Is this level right here around 4,800. And I'm going to be attempting shorts up here, kind of an ABC. I know that Peter Brandt put out a tweet saying there's a 75% chance that gold has already bottomed, and it's possible. But I think that the gold has one more decline left in it under 4,000. So this will be I'm looking to get short gold here up around the 4,800-ish, and silver has its resistance coming in here around 78, and that there could be one more drop. And there's been a pretty tight correlation with gold, the metals, the dollar, and the market, right? So if I'm right about gold running out of juice here and it's going to make a new low, that should not be a bullish backdrop for risk because they rallied together and gold, you could say gold topped later or earlier, depending upon if you look at NASDAQ or S&Ps. And then this is a little bit short-term confusing. I was looking for this to be a breakout in the dollar. So, risk on is a weaker dollar, but I'm still not convinced that we saw the low in euro. And I think there's going to be a time to short it. I don't know if it has 117 in it, but I still think there's another low. And the other shift is the yen may have peaked at 60.40. So the worst thing for the market would be for the yen to strengthen and the dollar strengthen. So we've mainly had the dollar strengthening and the yen getting cheaper with the US dollar yen going up. But if the yen strengthens and the dollar strengthens simultaneously, that puts pressure on both carry trades, the US dollar carry trade and the more heavily used Japanese yen carry. So those are a few developments, but the things that I see that are pretty short term to me is to try this gold short for one more decline. And after this low, I think it's going to be a major low, about 3,800 or so. And silver, I have Confluence here at the $50 level. Okay, this was a major breakout right here at 50. If I go back years, back to 1980, 50 was a big number. Just trust me on it. And then I have off this 2 drive, I have this coming in around the same level. So this is where I would definitely stack silver at 50 at the old breakout. And that's when I think the dollar's going to turn. So I think this turn in the dollar is premature. But boy, what an ugly week.
Dale, I had a pivot day on the dollar today, and a pivot week this week too.
That may have been it then.
We could take a look though at because now that you're saying that, I want to see when the next pivot is on the dollar.
Okay, because it sure looked to me like we were going to break out of this kind of ascending triangle. I certainly wasn't looking for a failure on this move, that this was going to be it. And then if we closed above it, you have some pretty good targets up here. So this is another curveball today. But I'm using it as a reason. That's what kind of lifted the metals, especially silver. Silver needs a weaker dollar more than gold does. So those are the trades I'm looking at. Maybe I'll have a chance to do it on the full moon. I still think there might be some turning points. Maybe we had our first one in stocks today, but we could have some other turning points, and maybe this was it. Turning point in the dollar. We'll see.
We'll see. I mean, I think that dollar, that daily on the dollar, if you look at the dollar daily, I think that there's a big enough range because your support zone on the dollar is 98. Oh, that's the euro.
Oh.
98.88 is the support there.
Yeah.
That there's room to tighten up there and form a like an equilibrium pattern, a tightening range. And that's kind of what I'm looking for to shape up on the dollar, at least over the next week or so.
Okay.
But today's sell-off on the dollar was triggered by Iran's president came out midday saying we're ready to end the war, but want guarantees. And so, and that, that was actually, people were finding that was actually an article from yesterday, but it hit the social media platforms midday US today. That's really what led to that sell-off on the dollar.
So the death of the petrodollar was kind of the key to that. And Iran's only been accepting one, even with the ships they've left through, like Pakistan and India. They're not taking dollars.
And I'm not sure, Dale, how long you're looking for this setup, and maybe Margot with or Blair with your pivots. But we do have the last week of April. So Monday, April 27th, we have the parade of the 4 big central banks giving their next rate decision. And this month will be interesting because we actually will start on a Monday with Bank of Japan. And so Bank of Japan will go first. FOMC will be that Wednesday, the 29th, and Thursday will be Bank of England and the ECB. And so, depending on what they decide to do, and who knows where we'll be at with the Middle East conflict and the energy supply chain, and what may or may not happen that week with rate decisions.
Well, you know what I didn't talk about the end of the month is that we have geocentric Uranus making its final ingress into the sign of Gemini. And that actually happens on Saturday evening, the 20, what is that, the 25th, I think? And then Monday, I think, didn't you say Monday, Jarrid, is the Bank of Japan rate decision? So
yeah, the 27th.
Yeah, and we've also got a Venus-Uranus conjunction that takes place right before Uranus moves into the sign of Gemini. And, you know, for the non-astro fluent, what that Venus-Uranus conjunctions, Venus rules currency. And so and Uranus is disruption, it's sudden unexpected events. It's also technological innovation. And so to have a Venus-Uranus conjunction taking place right at 0 degrees Gemini, right as Uranus is making an ingress into, actually, let me grab the chart real quick. Hold on.
Right, well, I just wrap with
Yeah.
Canada, it's long Canada from the last show.
Oh,
and
yeah.
This had the best run. I mean, for the dollar move, this was pretty huge. And this does not smack of it's going to be over, even though we could I'm looking for a pullback. But I would buy this. I still think there's 143 in it. I'd love to see a 50% retrace in USD CAD over the next week or so. 7.5
or even a 382. That'd be perfect.
Yeah, 38.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very strong looking chart. So
Yeah,
I don't think the dollar's just going to die.
Yeah, I agree with that.
With this. Okay. All right. I surrender my television. Like the outer limits.
And for the viewers at home, a little macro 101. If your central bank hikes rates, that will strengthen your currency. If they cut rates, it will weaken the currency versus other currencies. So again, and right now, the consensus from the energy analysts that know what they're talking about is actually Europe is the weak link in terms of the energy need and the desperation. And I forget if it was the Bank of England or the ECB, but in 2008, as oil was spiking, they actually hiked rates one time before they had to quickly reverse it. So could we see something like that out of Bank of Japan or out of one of the European central banks at the end of the month if they're in enough pain?
Well, if the yen digs in its heels here, then and we make a new high, that's going to take it up to about 62. And that certainly is intervention levels where they're going to be concerned. And the US can participate because we're spending a lot more money in the Middle East than we would have to on a currency intervention to help Japan put a floor on the yen, because that would take the heat off yields globally if they did that.
And that's what they did last month. The Fed did a rate check on the currency, and it sent it right down. So the market did their job for them.
So the check is not going to work this time. It's kind of like, you lose effectiveness.
Yeah, fool me once.
Yeah, now it's going to be show me at 162. That's what I think.
Blair, what do you got on your radar for April?
All right, what do I got? Okay. I'm going to talk about harmonics a little bit because the harmonic indicators have been just nailing these turns. I'm going to talk a little bit about Ethereum. All right, so there's 3 harmonic scripts on this. The one that has been calling the shots lately is the thin red one. And it's anchored to the top over here, October 30th. And the way you use these is you kind of find the first weight down and the bigger move. And then the concept is it's a fractal. You expand it, and then you subdivide the expansion into effectively musical notes, right? So all these numbers up here, musical ratios, Okay. Now I apply these ratios to both time and price. So you can see the price levels here, 24,240, 23,012. Look at that beautiful touchdown here on Monday. This green line indicates a 1/8 subdivision of the bigger white line bands. These are basically Fibonacci spirals. Okay, so you subdivide the space between white bands into eights, and you get the green lines, and that's proven to be effective. So long story short, we got a bounce where I thought we would. If we failed here, then I think we would have tested this cluster of harmonic lines down here in the 22s. Okay, we still may, right? But the path of least resistance, you can, if you scroll back and look left, it definitely takes effort to get through these harmonic lines. Multiple attempts to get through this level here. Okay. And I think this is one of the things that I'm kind of leaning on with all of this uncertainty and volatility is just simple levels, just trying to keep things as simple as possible, looking at the price action around the key levels. I've got great levels on my chart. I know that. I can trust them, and I can just look at the price action around these levels. So I think the path of least resistance is up to retest this white magic level here at like 24,480 and this harmonic level at 24,240. I don't think we get through here on the first try, right? It's going to take multiple attempts. We've got months and months and months of trapped longs up here. They're gonna want to punch out at every chance they can get. So yeah, I kind of agree with Margot, your call for a volatile April, and pretty skeptical that this is going to be a V bottom. I am able to kind of pinpoint a few days where I think we can sort of lean long. So here's let me just take a look at oh, this is a mess. This isn't showing what I want to show. All right, let me come back with the point I want to make on that chart a little bit later. I'll see if I can make the point here. No, I'll come back and make that point later. Let me show you Ethereum. Ethereum long term. So we're looking at a weekly chart here. Okay, and this is the purple lines are Jupiter offset to count from 138 degrees. So this is one of the little tricks that we use in time trades to sort of align the planetary cycles with the background fixed stars, right? So this is sort of me shamelessly stealing good ideas from the Vedic astrologers out there. And when you chop it up into 24 degrees of movement, so we get a cycle reset, that's what these vertical lines are. So Jupiter moves, hits 24 degrees of travel, resets. Okay, so that's how you read this. Look at how
it has a better structure than Bitcoin, right, Blair? Because the RSI structure is better in Ethereum, stronger than Bitcoin.
and certainly the Astro this year is better as well. If you're a follower or if you know the basics of Chinese Astro, Bitcoin is in what's called its enemy year, and that's going to put a cap on any rallies this year. So this is why for trading the crypto complex, I'm favoring Ethereum over Bitcoin this year. When I turn short, I'll short Bitcoin over Ethereum. But
thank you.
Look at by the way, it's great to get that confluence with your RSIs because I don't use RSIs. So thanks for that. And just look at the overall pattern of these vertical line to vertical line cycles. So these are 24-degree cycles, okay? So there's almost always like a low at the start of the vertical line. and then it moves up. Sometimes it peaks right in the midpoint of the cycle. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it peaks earlier. But again, this was a low. This was a low. This was a low. Even though we basically went sideways, this was clearly a low. Little double top with some symmetry centered around the midpoint there. Zoom in a bit. This was a low. It came back to retest the prior low in the prior segment, but it held, made a high, lower low, and this wasn't literally a low, but it was, when you're looking at the breadth of the entire cycle, came up, made a very strong high here, and retraced the whole thing. So this is why I like Ethereum long. I think looking into May, maybe even June, I think it's got some good structure. And yeah, we could be long Ethereum versus these purple lines here as they crawl up the chart.
I like the way it was holding up Friday while there was a bloodbath going on. And I could show you real quick, just classic TA on Ethereum, is that we have a downtrend being taken out. And I like it a lot too, Blair. I think it has legs. I actually think crypto was respectable with what was happening in equities.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, like it was certainly showing a sign of strength,
some relative strength. So there's a downtrend it took out. And they tried to stop me out. This must have been Sunday night. I got long Friday, but this is pretty nice looking day it put in.
Mm-hmm.
So and I figured if there's going to be risk on, I'd rather be long Ethereum than be long equities because of its relative strength. But I think that we could be on our way. This is a pretty nice structure. It looks like a doggy, doesn't it, Marco? Here's the legs, the back legs, and here's the front legs, and here's the head, and the long snout. And it looks like the doggy wants to jump up.
I prefer Ethereum as well, just from the astro perspective that Blair mentioned, but also I'm really interested in the stablecoin narrative. I actually think that it is I think it is the currency reset that comes with the broader cycles that the longer term cycles that we see resetting right now, specifically the Saturn Neptune cycle that just reset in February. It's a very long running transition, but it's very heavily correlated to currency resets. And
so how do people buy stable coins? How do you, having that knowledge of that's going to be the key in the reset, how do you position yourself with stable coin?
I think that's kind of the tricky part, right? Because so I've been actually targeting Circle, CRCL, and Coin because they're going to be, onboarding or places where people can buy them. But it's a kind of a complicated matter. I'm actually working on, I've been doing a bunch of research on it, and I'm going to make a video on it here eventually. I'm not fully ready yet, but there's going to be all different kinds of issuers. So even things like, PayPal, American Express, because you'll have retail issuers and commercial issuers, and it's a very, very interesting subject matter, and the how to capitalize on it is kind of that's the largely unknown piece. But the Clarity Act is a huge, let's call it catalyst, that's kind of just looming on the horizon. And Circle, if you look at the CRCL chart, Dale, since you got it there, and you can see it on Coin too. Actually, where it took that big move down was we had news that came out because the argument, the prime argument, and Jarrid, you can help me along with this if you want, because I know you're probably more knowledgeable on this than I am.
And Dale, Circle's actually a stock.
Yeah, CRCL, it's that top one right there. Oh, well, that's Python.
You got to
Is
go
this
to
it?
it's actually a
Oh, go
public
to stocks. Yeah, there you go.
yeah.
There you go.
This
Yep.
one?
Yep. So this one is one that I've bought a little bit on this pullback here, and I will add more on a confirmed reversal.
Yeah.
But if you this is back down here, this really took off and had a huge run up. Yeah.
It left
So
an island, Margot.
Oh,
Well,
let's
this
see.
breakaway gap.
Oh,
We're not going to see this breakaway gap again
no, I
for a
agree.
long time. And this does look better than coin.
It
It's
definitely
stronger. It has
is
more
stronger.
relative strength.
Yeah.
And some people are playing, micro strategies. That's the weakest of the three that we're looking at. Ethereum, um, coin, and this one, Margot.
Yeah.
I like this one.
Yeah, this is a good one. And I think one of the biggest points of contention in the debate of the Clarity Act right now is whether or not they're going to allow stable coins to provide yields. And the banks are really against that because, and this I personally hypothesize that it is going to be approved because I see the stable coins as kind of like the Trojan horse almost. It's like, this is how they get the currency reset. They get people to voluntarily participate in the currency reset, right? It's like, if you transfer all your money over to stable coins, then you can make say 5% yield on just holding them, right? And that's as opposed to putting your money in a bank where maybe you make nothing, or maybe you have a savings account where you make 1 or 2%, So people will voluntarily move their money over. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, a few years later, all of our money is in the digital world, and there's a lot more controls that are available to be put on it, right?
So that's the Trojan horse.
That's the Trojan horse. Yeah.
Central bank currency.
That's what I think.
Well,
yeah, yep.
I mean, in a second derivative effects of moving to, private stable coins in the US, because right now you're going to get every major commercial bank that's going to produce their own stable coin. And that's the main contention, is that the commercial banks don't want the non-banks to have a yield that they can offer on their stable coins. And that's been what's held up. But from a US standpoint and maintaining the strength of the US dollar as the reserve currency, it not only affects inside the United States, but now foreigners in other countries can go around their own banking system and own US dollar backed stable coins outside of their domestic banking system. And all that money is going to get backed by treasuries. So you hold up your US Treasury market, and now you're taking the banking power away from the domestic countries to where now you can have, financial control over those countries. And then the other second derivative effect is stable coins allows commercial banks to interact with shadow banks, the non-depository. Right now, the Fed can only print money into commercial banks, and so goes commercial banks to Fed. Fed cannot help the shadow banks. Well, stable coins allows you to get a QE effect without having to expand the Fed's balance sheet.
Yeah. Wow. And Kraken just got the first direct account with the Fed just like a month ago. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, they got access to the Fed window.
Yeah.
So
right on
time. Times they are a change.
They are. Yeah, definitely need some QE innovation.
I thought the dollar's demise, they're talking about, well, Warsh, isn't there going to be a vote on Kevin Warsh pretty soon?
Well, he has to get confirmed by Congress to take the chair of the Fed in May.
Okay. Well, he's been talking about an accord between the Fed and the Treasury, and the playbook they're dusting off is yield curve control, like Japan did for 30 years. And in the US, we did it during or right after World War II. And that is the death knell for any currency, because if people aren't getting paid the right interest because the government's controlling that yield, people are going to flee the dollar and repatriate to their own currencies. So I think that's a big negative. Maybe stablecoin will kind of balance that out but that's going to be, I think, a real nail. And I've been, I'm not always a dollar bear. I've been dollar bullish, but that's how I could see a 140 euro and an 85, 90 cent Aussie is once yield curve controls are instituted.
Right. Right. I wanted to just quickly finish that thought because I didn't have my chart ready. So we've got this this ability in time trades to see what are called juice spikes, but which are really high precision 3D conjunctions. And there's two involving Earth coming up in the near future. Okay, so these are heliocentric conjunctions. So the observers on the sun, we've got Earth, Mars, and Neptune lined up in 0.3 degrees separation. Okay, so very tight. And what's interesting here is we've got both Earth and a big outer planet, Neptune, which tends to have the strongest magnetic field. So the whole concept behind this is physics. It's EMFs. It's based on these things called Birkeland currents, which allow electrical energy to rebalance between planets in the solar system. So this is a time of peak alignment. All right. So this will be the moment of maximum current as things realign between these three planets and the sun. That is Monday, April 13th. Now, how to trade this? We tend to see bullish moves up into the peak alignment moment, and then fall back on the backside. So it'll be important to watch, just the extent of the correction on the backside as these planets separate. And same thing over here. Again, Earth, Mars, Saturn within 1.2 degrees. Okay, that's the peak alignment in 3D on Sunday, April 19th. Okay, so these would be kind of the moments of.
Yeah, Margot has those dates for other reasons.
Yeah, exactly.
There's confluence around that time frame.
She had this week, I think. Yeah,
17th, wasn't it, Margot?
Yeah, starting on the 17th, running through the 20th is kind of what I'm calling that vortex window. Yeah. Blair, I totally like those. The fact that those have Mars involved too, definitely speaks to kind of a backside down move. I agree with you on that.
Yeah. And Blair, just to add macro confluence, you're going to get US CPI on Friday the 10th, which is one of the top news items of the month.
What time is that juice on the 13th? It's like overnight, huh?
It's like
midnight
30 Chicago time.
Yeah.
On Monday. So that's this. So this would be the moment of maximum energy or bullishness, right? So it would fade after that. So Friday with that news release, on the front side of the juice spike here, that could be a good ramp up. But that energy could fade on Monday.
And Tuesday the 14th is PPI. So maybe you get a run up on light CPI, but then PPI, the producers are coming hot.
Which would make sense because the energy shock would be reflected first in PPI, right? Before it filters into CPI.
Correct.
All right.
Good stuff.
Cool. I just love it when the puzzle pieces fit together like that.
I know. This is like, I look forward to this all month.
You know what song could be your theme song then, Blair?
What do you?
Van Morrison, Days Like This. My mom is when all the parts of the puzzle begin to look like they fit.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Dale, you can serenade me anytime.
I love it.
Yeah.
Real quick before we wrap up, I wanted to circle back to the metals, because I had Dale. I was interested in what you were sharing, and I wanted to kind of put our heads together on this because, oops, not that one. Oh dear, hold on,
Margot. Yeah, I do need to drop, so let me just say goodbye to everyone.
Got it. Thank you so much for coming, Blair.
Yeah, thank you.
See you, Blair.
We'll see you next time.
Cheers. Bye now.
So this is what I've got for, okay, so I'm seeing a largely directional move. Look, this is the weekly on gold right here. And this is the cycle analog projected forward. And so I'm seeing a largely directional move because we're moving into what's called Venus interval 5. And Venus interval 5 is typically a period of directional moves across many assets, not all of them, but a lot of them. And what I thought was really interesting on gold, and this, because Dale, you had said you were looking for a slight move lower, but if you look at the gold analog, gold can retest this low. And now keeping in mind that the analog is not forecasting price, I'm scaling it to price. This is a cycle. It's forecasting structure and direction. But when you see something here, like you see, which is almost a double bottom here, right? And that would be on the bullish analog, right? So that's one scenario. Then you've got the bearish scenario, which we can't rule out, certainly at this point in the game. And then that would be a double top here before a move down. But if you look at it on the daily, there's that ABCD that we just looked at. I feel like Blair said something that was what I said in my my Discord forecast on Sunday, is that I'm really leaning into levels right now because I think that it's so important where we're at right now. I mean, levels are always important, but right now I've got a lot of key levels. So for me, this is a pretty strong one, 4,100 on gold. If we break that with a slow grind down, you've got the most bearish analog. But if you retest it and then eventually break it, then you've got the second most bearish analog. But if you test it and you hold it, you've got a bullish move up. Conversely, let me show you silver. Silver breaks it. This is very interesting. Silver has one bullish variation. Okay. Eventually it's bullish. It's not bullish right away. Where it breaks the low, doesn't stay there very long, gets bought up and comes back up, but has ultimately maybe a period of choppy range trading weakness until June before a move up. So those are the silver variations.
Yeah.
Anyway,
well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That would say that that silver should be my preferred short rather than gold, which also could mean that eventually this rally that started in risk today fades and we have at least a retest of these lows. And I think silver would suffer from it more than gold.
That's definitely what this is saying. Yep. And then of course the alternate scenario is that the low is in, which is what we talked about. And then we're just off to the races. And honestly, I haven't ruled that out. We've got
you can't rule anything out.
No, not at all. But look, I mean, from a time cycle, and this is just traditional time cycles like Hearst cycles.
And look, you have April 20th again.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
right there.
We have April 20th, a lot of lows. And I think both gold, silver, and the market will put in their lows pretty close to each other.
Yeah.
And
they're pretty tightly correlated right now.
I would guess it would likely be due to the Middle East conflict.
Yeah, reigniting.
Because when you look at metals, I mean, if foreign countries and investors need U.S. liquidity to buy higher energy, they've got to sell their gold and silver. But if that de-escalates and you get oil moving through the Strait of Hormuz again, that will alleviate some of that need for more dollar liquidity.
I wouldn't bet on oil moving through the Strait for a month. That's why.
Yeah, well, you had Luke Roman on who said that like a week ago. He's saying he thought the Strait would be closed for at least another month.
Yeah, I could see that. Maybe it's open by the time Trump's trip to CG, which he postponed 2 months to sometime in May.
Yeah, and so you got, that 20th, there's no macro, so that would lead me to believe maybe some some conflict event. And then obviously if it comes into the end of April, then maybe the central bank's decisions are the factor.
Could be. Yeah. I learned a lot from you guys again, so I have some ammo, some pearls.
Thank you, Dale. I learned so much from you, getting to talk to you here, and then also just watching your videos that you put out regularly. I wish that you were still on X. Boy, I keep hoping somebody's gonna resurrect your account.
Well, there are some people trying to help me from Real Vision.
Nice.
So we'll see.
Yeah, and I don't even trade FX, but I always count my pips thanks to you.
Do you? All right. No, don't just count your pips. Count
Right.
the other stuff, you know?
Yeah.
I count my blessings every day.
Lay up treasure in
Exactly.
heaven, my man. All right.
Absolutely.
Well, it was great seeing you guys.
Yeah. Do y'all want to tell everybody where they can find you real quick?
I'm hiding out. Don't look for me. I have a Discord room, TradeGateHub.
And
Awesome.
you can find me in the Trade Travel Chill community or in Margot's Discord.
Awesome. And you can find me in my Discord or on X. You can follow me on X. I have a Patreon. And if you are interested in an astrology reading, you can book one of those through my website. All the links will be in the video description below. Don't forget to like us and subscribe. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Adios. Bye-bye.
Bye.